Hello everybody, welcome to a brand new video. This is the top 5 Nullify / Stagger, or basically buff suppression champions in Marvel Contest of Champions. Now at the end of the day, there are elements of things that I'm sure that will bring a lot of criticism in the comments, and by the way, you're entitled to your own opinion. You're quite happy to disagree with me, but what I've done in this is preface a lot of the things with information which I've put in the description down below to come to these conclusions, which I will explain. At the end of the day, these champions will excel in 3 factors. They either have one, if not all 3 of these elements, which is Stagger, Nullification, or Buff Suppression. And as a champion, they hold these key factors and part of why they're so good. Either they're quick to get their Nullification, that's a key element. They have easy rotations in order to sustain that Nullification or Buff Suppression. And they're easy to get to just doing basic hits, from doing heavy attacks right the way through to, just throwing in an SP2. We're going to consider all those factors, but also go a bit above and beyond. And that will be, do they have extra elements to their kit? Do they have any immunities? Do they have some burst damage? Do they have something extra that will allow them to be one of the best and top 5? So now that I've set everything up, let's get into this and show some footage at the same time. So before going anywhere, I just want to shout out those that didn't really make the top 5. Reasons being, well, it's either one and done, like Mephisto. You get soul imprisonment, which is brilliant. It allows you to suppress buffs coming in, which is great, but at the same time, it does mean that it's, well, when you run out of those persistent charges, then you're kind of left scuppered trying to suppress buffs. Scarlet Witch Sigil has his well-timed block and then does Nullification, which is excellent. And there's other champions, like we've got Juggernaut doing a stagger off of heavy attacks and able to suppress buffs, which I absolutely love. Magic's SP1 is able to nullify, as well as the SP3 can be fantastic. A personal favourite of mine, which, I would have been incredibly biased if I said, oh, Dormammu's SP1, which I do love Dormammu because you're able to put extra degen and damage, and does have double immunity, but unfortunately his damage lets him down and he has to be specifically built as a Suicide Mastery champion in order to be incredibly effective. And there's so much more, from Man-Thing, Ebony Maw, Mangog, you name it. There are some really kind of like cool champions to pick, but I've gone with these 5. The first champion on my list is Sasquatch, mainly because his rotation to get stagger and suppress buffs coming in is actually one of the most easiest and effective. A 14-second stagger can be put on with doing a heavy attack, but as well the damage you can get with this champion by doing ruptures can really make this a fun champion, an effective champion, a very aggressive, but also have that little bit of utility at times where you're like, oh, hang on, I need an option that's a bit of a tank and has got a little bit of regen as well at the same time. Hood is on the list basically because of critical hits. Let's face it, through the battle you're going to be easily grabbing yourself critical hits, which is going to allow you to put a non-stacking stagger passive on the enemy lasting 5 seconds. Let's face it, you're going to be doing crits left, right and center, which allows us to give better chance for this to be on. It also allows you to, when the stagger ends, to get direct damage on the opponent and heals the Hood for matching him out, which is great. This again is like great interaction to stagger buffs, get something back, and also deal damage at the same time. And the SP2, which allows you to put on a fateseal, can be really effective to keep those buffs down. And since the recent buff of Hood and the way that the champion works, if you nullify, you get bullets. The bullets help towards the damage potential of this champion. So it's all good, all works really well and is fantastic. Next on the list is Symbiote Supreme. Symbiote Supreme, well, what can you really kind of like say about this champion except for it is a lean, mean, nullifying machine, like the George Foreman grill when it comes to damage output with burst damage. Anytime any champion gets a lot of buffs, this dude is punching it left, right, and center. It's also got a little bit of extra stuff with power drain, as well as great damage potential, burst damage, nullification, and as well power drain. Is like loads on offer for Symbiote Supreme. And man, when you shoot off that Chithin's Cunning, 100% chance when the blessing is triggered to immediately nullify all buffs of the opponent, and doing 423.8 direct damage passively dealt to the opponent, each buff nullified. It's nice. It's a nice lot of damage to see. It kind of reminds me of Morningstar's SP2. She didn't make the list, but that's basically because this is better and does more damage and is incredibly fun. And also it's less effort in order to nullify those buffs. I should have mentioned that. That's a key factor. Next on the list is a personal favorite, and this is a great champion. So just on the kind of like immunities, utility stand front, the champion is immune to poison, bleed, and incinerate, providing she is in the respective curses. So curse of blood, curse of plague, curse of hellfire, bleed immune, poison immune, incinerate immune, respectively. Okay, so that's the first thing, right? The second thing from this is that it has utility to power control when curse of plague, and also regenerate in curse of blood. And with hellfire, do direct damage, like a nice kind of like burst of direct damage, which is fantastic. But as well, when it comes to the nullification, a lot of us will be familiar with the champion's SP2, which sets a buff immunity debuff for 10 seconds, which is important, but at the same time can be annoying if the champion has a debuff shrug, which can be very frustrating. However, though, if it doesn't, happy days. As well, we do have something that is really quite nice. Whenever, and like I'll put footage describing this at the moment, like over the top of this, which is I'm going to take the champion against Groot. As a lot of you know, with Groot, the OG Groot, he builds a lot of buffs incredibly quickly. Now, suppression of those is difficult. Now, the great thing about this is that Groot being a bleed immune champion allows you to gain more charges when you're hitting into it. And as it says here, that Claire starts with 3 charges. Each time she or the opponent are immune to any effect, she gains 1 charge, and 4% of her max power charges stack up to 20. Okay, but that's what we need to, you know, the charge, get an extra charge. Great. And after landing and receiving a light or medium attack and the opponent has 1 or more buffs, a charge is consumed and 1 buff is nullified. This allows for, like, you know, okay, so the debuff shrugs, which, let's face it, there's some champions out there that do, but at least you can start suppressing any buffs that are being kind of like worked in. So you just by doing basic attacks are able to nullify and rotate around the SP2 if you want to suppress any more. But as well, having that extra bit of like utility, damage potential, immunities, man, and power control, yeah, great champion. And you might be surprised, I don't think you'd be surprised, but one of the champions that has got to get on my list is Dr. Doom. The reason I believe so much in Dr. Doom is on about easy rotations and other stuff. Similar to Black Widow ClaireVoyant, could arguably, and this is the thing, it's not about like, okay, number 1 on the list is like, that's my number 1. It's just these are 5 champions that I believe in. So they're in no particular order. It's just all about easy rotations, easy to grab and suppress the buffs and extra stuff. So Dr. Doom is great on damage, especially if you're rotating around SP3, SP3, and then an SP2, you can do a great amount of incinerate damage. But as well, power control, like one of the most fine, like amazing, like gold tier power controls. There are better ones out there, but I just kind of think that the rotation's a lot easier, especially SP1 rotations on power control. But as well, hitting in a nullify, just hit into the enemy, get that shock on, do the Doom slap, and you're able to stagger, right? That's an easy rotation. And then from that, you're able to then kind of, yeah, suppress debuffs, suppress buffs, and then throw an SP1. And as a lot of you know, on an SP1, if you've got right there, each beam hit has a 100% chance to nullify up to 1 buff. That's great. That's really helpful. There's also a bit more when it comes to the Aura of Hazareth, which kind of like improves this. I mean, there are some extras like Doom becomes unstoppable and stun immune against the last hit of incoming special attacks, which, you know, it's great, very handy. Also, contact with the opponent has a 30% chance to nullify up to 1 buff. Again, playing into the basics. If you're hitting through on the enemy, then at least there's kind of that chance to nullify more buffs, which is part of obviously this video and this preparation. Light attacks grant no power and steal 3% of the opponent, so that's the thing about playing aggressive and grabbing more power from the enemy. And, you know, just the main thing about this champion, which is landing a heavy attack, 100% chance to stagger an opponent for 10 seconds. Well, and, you know, that's just great. Fantastic. That's basically it. Easy rotations, easy to grab, through the basics. And that's really it. That's all you can really hope for. And great damage if you're able to rotate and have the opportunity to rotate. A little bit of immunity as well with shock, armor shatter, and armor break. But yeah, those have been my 5. But do you completely disagree with the 5 that's been selected? As I said, it was very difficult to put together 5, especially considering certain things like Scarlet Witch Sigil, which is great, but not everybody's going to have it. There's predominantly more free-to-play players than there are people that would have the champion, so it kind of makes sense not to kind of like mention her in the list, even though it would be great to do a well-timed block and then find you're nullifying something. But it's not so super sufficient, especially with high buff champions that you need to suppress the buffs quickly, and a lot of the ones are easy rotations. I put a little information in the description if you want to check out others and the rotations, and little write-ups of like why I came to the decisions I have. But where would you put your top 5? Put it in the comment section down below. Be interested to see where players are at with for whatever reasons as well, whether or not it's damage potential, whether or not it's something else. Put it down in the comments. And thank you very much for watching this weekend video, and I shall see you for some freshly squeezed content coming very soon, probably tomorrow or something, as we get ready for the Lunar New Year event. Appreciate you all. Have a great weekend. Bye bye for now.